Begin the Eruvin Daf Masechtas Eruvin Daf Lamed Alf. Begin on the bottom line of Lamed Beis, where we continue explaining the halacha of our Mishnah, which we had a chiddush regarding where you're allowed to put your Eruv, and we had the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. That's where our Daf continues. Ashes Kosban's B'Kavtuk and Necheskel to anytime Daf Achayim. Appreciate everyone who's joining us for today's Daf. Some of these we're going to speak about today's Daf is like we said in the Mishnah. We have a machlekes between Rabbi and Rabbi Yehuda. If a person is allowed to put his Eruv as a kohen in the cemetery, which seemingly he can't get there, and we'll see even a bigger chiddush regarding even if the food is made out of truma. Then we discuss Eruvin regarding Mishnah, if it's made with meiser and truma related foods, that it might seem to be problematic, and still, even though you can't really eat it, you can still make an Eruv out of that. And then we have with the following Mishnah after that, what's the halacha regarding a chershet v'kat and bringing an Eruv to make the Eruv tchumen, which they don't have necessarily das, would they be able to make an Eruv? Then some of the key terms and concepts are what's called mitzvahs lav lahanis nenu, which is, as we mentioned in the previous time, mitzvahs are not given to have benefits. Even if you're not allowed to have benefit from something, that wouldn't be an impediment regarding to make an Eruv with that thing. Pshuti Kleyates, the law regarding the laws of tumah that's going to come up in today's daf, is that if it's a flat wooden utensil, it doesn't have any concave, then that is not mekabel tumah. The concept of migdi boya mafkelu lenichse v'haba'ani b'chazile. Certain things are fit for a poor person because we have certain leniencies for a poor person. So even a wealthy person, technically what's called migu, since he could go ahead and make all his stuff hefker and he's going to be an ani, so then we really give him that status right now. And the concept of what's called chazak shlich eiseh shlichusa, we have a presumption that an agent will do his agency. We could rely on that, and actually that's going to take us into the next step regarding the parameters of that halacha. So we begin the current daf, the bottom line of Lama Mabez, where this is going on the law of the Mishnah. We had a machlekes Rabbi Yehuda regarding if a person is in the Sheda Teba Migdal, a carriage, a box, or a closet, and he's a kohen, he's allowed to go and put his Eruv in the cemetery. Why? Because although a kohen can't get into the cemetery, you have to be in the same area as the Eruv. He could get in there because he holds like oil zarg shmei oil. A moving partition can stop it to him. So therefore, although he's in a cemetery, he's in the box. And that box is an oil, a separate oil, and therefore it's chatzitza, it's a partition, therefore he's able to get in over here, and therefore it's not going to be a problem. However, our Gemara continues with the following halacha. V'adatanya. Says the Gemara, but this that we learned in the following brisa, which takes it one step further, and the Gemara is going to try to understand that. He says, he says, ma'arvin l'koyin tar, you can make an Eruv, which again is 2 meals worth for a koyin that's tahar, b'truma tahira, with truma that's tahar, b'kever in a grave. Now, as Rashi points out, for sure with chulin, because even if the chulin would become tamei, it's chulin that's tamei is still fit. There's no isser in chulin that's tamei. The chiddush is even truma, where if truma becomes tamei, it's not fit. No one's allowed to eat truma that's tamei. Still, as the Bryce is going to explain, there's a way out of this that you could do this with the truma in the grave. Now, as Rashi points out, we specifically said a kohen that's tahar with truma that's tahir. Because if let's say it's truma that's tameya, no, that wouldn't be good because that's not fit. Not for a kohen that's tamei, not for a kohen that's tahir. No one's allowed to eat truma that's tamei. And also, we didn't say a kohen tamei with truma tahira because it's not fit for him. A kohen that's tamei is not allowed to eat truma even if it's tahir because he's tamei. He's not allowed to eat. So because, as Rashi is going to shortly explain, this Rabbi Yehuda is going like Sumchas, who says it has to be fit for the person himself. So, but what we're saying is, you could put for a kohen tar truma that's tar on the grave. Says he, okay, heicha azla, how's he going to go? So that's what we explained in the Mishnah already. Rabbi Yehuda said, b'shida teva megal, with a box, a wagon, a closet, whatever it is, in a closed enclosure. Fine, that I partly understand how he can get there. The problem is, but once you're putting the food down, the truma, on the grave, itami law. In other words, although according to Yehuda, I get it that he could get in there in the cemetery because he's going straight to Megdal, and for sure if it's just a singular grave because then he could just stand right on the side of it. The problem is the truma. Once you put it down over there, the truma comes tummy because the tumah of oil is that when you are over a tummy source or a tummy source is over you, or you're both under some other canopy, that's the tumah of oil. So the truma itself is becoming tummy. So how could we understand that you're making an Eruv out of truma tahira, it's becoming truma tamei, and now it's not fit for you anymore because it's already truma tamei? Says the Gemara, 2 approaches. Either b'shalei hoksher, we're talking about that it never came in contact with one of the 7 liquids, and a food item is only susceptible to mekabel tumah when it came in contact with liquid. Or shenilashim made Paris, it was kneaded with fruit juices, which is not one of the 7 types of liquids. It either didn't get wet at all, or even if it got wet, it was only with something like fruit juices, which does not make a food item susceptible to tumah. It has to be what's called yad shach adam, which is the acronym for different types of liquids. 7 types are the specific things that make it susceptible to tumah. But then the Gemara continues, says, okay, but the heicha maisila, how could he bring the food to himself to eat it. Because Rabbi Yehuda, as we pointed out before, and Rashi says it over here, it has to be that's fit for him to eat it. Rashi brings two rayas. One is because he says it's a kain tahar with truma that's tahira, and he does not validate for a kain that's tamei with truma that's tahira because it would be fit for someone else, for some other kain. Doesn't say that. It has to be kain tahar eating tahara. Additionally, the words that he says are in the Mishnah lachetz v'lechel, that he could come in a box that's going to be mechitza and he could go and eat it. So you see that he holds that the person has to be able to eat it. The problem is, so it has to be that he's able to access it. How could he access it? How is he getting it? He puts his hand out, he's ready to become tummy because he's being over the grate. Says the Gemara, you could do it b'pshuti kliyates. You could do it with a flat wooden utensil to limit mekabel tumah, where it's not mekabel tumah because wood has to be able to have receptacle like it's compared to a sack in the pasuk. So therefore, that's how you can be able to access it. Because in contrast, if it was something that's mekabel tumah, it wouldn't be viable because what would happen then is the kli would become tummy mess because it became tummy where it's over the grave. So the grave, the dead person is an avi avoisa tumah, he's a grandfather of a tumah. The vessel that you're coming to take it with would become an avatama, and that would make the person who's holding the spoon, whatever it is, tummy as a rishon, and then he would be forbidden to go ahead and eat the truma that's tahira, which is a chiv misa, and then again it wouldn't be viable for him. Whereas Rashi addresses one step deeper. He says, although the Gemara is about to tell us that this spoon, whatever it is, does not have even the thickness of a tefach, so what's the problem? It only is kameis tumah when it's a tefach. So that Rashi brings from the Gemara in Shabbos of Yud Zayin that there was what's called the Shmoina Eser David. There was 18 decrees that they made that anything that's movable can bring tumah on itself, whatever that movable item itself, when it's over a mess, even in a minute amount. And then therefore it would be metam the person that's holding it, and then therefore again he would not be fit for truma. But be that as it may, the Gemara is saying the way out is you take pshuti kliyates, it's not makabel tumah, and therefore it's not going to make the tummy, the person that's touching it, the kohen, to make himself tummy itself. But then the Gemara says, but there's a different problem. The Gemara assumes that we're talking about a vessel that you're coming to take the food with when you're in the wagon, with that has a opening, it has a width of a tefach. Or as Rashi says, even if it doesn't have a width of a tefach, its circumference is a tefach, which the Rabbanim made exer over there in the Sefta Shabbos, that a person is carrying it even in the thickness of an ox goad, even though it's only the circumference is a tefach, that would also become tummy. So that itself, it's leaning over the grave, and then it's leaning over the carriage too. So then that way itself, you're going to become tummy. Says meaning even though the wood itself cannot become tummy, but it's going to be an oil. It's going to be over the grave and over the person himself. Says Gemara Demaisile, and the gear says achoydei. It says achoyre or achoydei, where we're talking about the chud is like a point. But basically, the way Rashi translated is the mitzvah say that the point where it is over the grave, it's not a tefach, so therefore it's not an oil, and therefore it's not going to transmit tumah over the person who's carrying it. So the Gemara says, okay, wait a second. If that's how you explain this halacha of Rabbi Yehuda, say, if that's the case, my time of the Rabbanan. Then what's the reason the Rabbanan, this halacha was only said Rabbi Yehuda in here, the Rabbanan, why do they disagree by a singular grave? In other words, we understand the mission, they disagree by a beis hakvaris, a cemetery, because they don't hold that you could even get in there. Because you can't get into the carriage and the wagon, because they don't hold that an oil zarik shmei oil. It's a movable oil, it's not considered chatzitza. So you're going to become tummy, you can't even get in there. But over here, where it's one grave, the halacha was said, bekever, it's one grave. You can stand there on the side, and you can bring it over there. You just told me how you could get with the kliyates. It's not makabel tumah. It's not a tefach thick. It wasn't, the truma itself was not needed with one of the liquids that make it acceptable to tumah. So what's the problem? Why do Rabban disagree? Says the Gemara, Ksavi, the Rabban hold that also liknais bias, quote unquote, be sur hana. You're not allowed to acquire a house with something that's forbidden to have benefit, which is what a grave is. Because you're having benefit, because through the Eruv Tchumen, you're allowed to go out of your Tchum. Now, any utility of a dead person is forbidden to have benefit, like the Gemara in Sanhedrin of Memzayin and the base. We know it because it says, but Tama Sham Miriam died over there. What's the Sham? We learn that Exer Sham for Egla Rufa. The Egla Rufa, the decapitated calf, and not have any benefit. So actually, Rashi points out, the Rabbana would say, this problem on the grave is actually forbidden even for Yisrael. Why did he say that in a Kain? It's only to tell you the strength of Rabbi Yehuda, who says it's going to be permitted even with a Kain. But the truth is, the Rabban holds you can't put an Eruv on a grave because you're benefiting from the grave. You can't put a bias on something that's asab no. So then the Gemara says, wait a second. Machalal is that to say Rabbi Yehuda Saba Mutter. Rabbi Yehuda holds that permitted to have hana from something that's issa to have hana. How does he hold that you can put an Eruv on the grave? Says the Gemara, Ksav mitzvahs lav lahanas ninu. He holds mitzvahs are not given to have benefit. The Eruv is generally only for Dvar Mitzvah, as the Gemara says later on the Pei Beis, that it's for Dvar Mitzvah that you make an Eruv, to go to a base oval, to go to a Simcha, and therefore that's not going to be problematic because you're not having quote unquote Hana. It's Isuri Hana, but I'm not having benefit. Never I can put my Eruv on the grave. So then the Gemara says, wait a second, that's the reasoning of Rabbi Yehuda, and Lahadam Rabbi, then this that Rabbi says in the Seftas Rosh Hashanah Chesam and Av, in the Yomei Yomi, he says you're allowed to blow with a shofar of a carbon oil, which you don't have benefit, it's Ol Hashem. Still, you're allowed to take the horn and blow it as a shofar. Why? Because it says, Rav, mitzvah level understand. No. He says, mitzvah is not going to have benefit, and therefore doesn't consider having benefit from a Dvar mitzvah, which something that you don't have benefit from. Says Gemara, let's say, wait a second, seems to be, his statement is contingent machlekes tanoim. Why? Because seemingly the Rabbanan disagree, and the Rabbanan say that mitzvahs aren't lahamis ninu. That's why they say you not have benefit from the Eruv, which is a mitzvah, on top of the grave. So seemingly Rava is dependent on machlekes tanan, which I'm going to tell you no. If people would hold that it's only for Dvar Mitzvah that you can make an Eruv, you're right. The Kulam and mitzvahs lav lahamis ninu. Everyone would agree to what the Vidu is saying, that mitzvahs are not given a benefit. You can to put your Eruv on the grave. Here, what are they disagreeing about is that Mars of the Yehuda holds Imar Dvar Mitzvah. He holds the Eruv is only for a mitzvah purpose, and therefore it can be permitted to mitzvah lav lahamis ninu. Mars of the Rabbanan hold Ma'arvan Afal Dvar Shos. You can make an Eruv even for something voluntary, something that's not a mitzvah. Oh, so therefore that's considered having benefit, and therefore you're not put on the grave because you're having benefit from Yisra No, which is a grave. But then the Gemara says, wait a second, approach number 3 the Gemara is coming to. Elohadam Rav Yisrael, and in this Rav Yisrael says in Ketzim Mishtat later on that Pei Beis Amid Av. With this we discuss primarily these sugyas. Ima Avin Advar Mitzvah, you're only allowed to make an Eruv for a mitzvah purpose. Similarly, his statement is contingent machlekes tanan because he's saying it's only Dvar Mitzvah, and we just explained Rabban hold you can make it Dvar Rishus. And Adam Rav Yisrael will tell you that no. The Kulam everyone holds Ima Avin Advar Mitzvah. You can only make an Eruv for Dvar Mitzvah. I'll go to B'menachem Oval, someone to go Sheva Brachas on Shabbos to go 2,000 numbers further. With the Kulam mitzvah lav, yes, everyone agrees to the Rabba's principle that mitzvah are not given to have benefit. So wait a second. So what would be the understanding of Rabban? Why would Rabban say it's us in it? Because Abba Hakim they disagree regarding the following principle. Mars of Yehuda holds keeping the kandal Eruv. Once the Eruv acquires Yubein Hashmashis, which is when the Shvisa happens, like Nicholay Dimitra, he doesn't care anymore that it should be protected, that food. And therefore there's no benefit you're having from the food here on the grave, because up until the Eruv gets acquired, even if he cares about it, that's not considered hamno, because that's a mitzvah. After the Eruv gets acquired, he doesn't care what happens to the food. Let the animals eat it up, whatever happens out there in the cemetery. So therefore you're not having any benefit. But the Mars of Rabbanan, the whole that's usher, because Nicholay Dimitri, he prefers that it's protected, the food over there, even after the Eruv is acquired, because the Yitzchak, if he needs to, he'll eat it. He left a good Subway sandwich over there, whatever it is, that's going to be his 2 meals, his Eruv over there, and therefore that's considered having benefit. And therefore if you leave your Eruv on top of the grave, that's considered having benefit, and therefore it's going to be us. And those are the 3 different approaches how to explain this machlekes between Yehuda and Rabbanan regarding putting an Eruv on a cemetery. We continue the halacha, the next Mishnah, which continues on this theme of regarding what's considered appropriate foods to make an Eruv with. That's where we had been discussing different foods or regarding how much do you need. So that's our mission discusses interesting cases regarding that of Trumas and Meisers, what's considered valid things to make an Eruv. Says the Mishnah, you can make an Eruv with demai. Demai means damai. What is this? It means to say a loaf of bread that you purchased from the Amma Aretz. You don't know, did he separate Trumas and Meiser or not? So it's an obligation for whoever bought it from that Amma Aretz to separate Trumas and Meisers. Now, the person who made the Eruv with this demai did not separate the Trumas and Meisers from this demai. It is going to be a good Eruv. So, and we're going to explain each one of these cases in the Gemara. Regarding the Meiser Rishon, which was given to the Levi, that the Truma was taken off, which means the Trumas Meiser. When the Levi gets Meiser, his tithe, he has to take a tithe off from his and give it to the Kohen. So the Meiser Rishon that he got, the Truma was taken. No, you can make an Eruv with that. So to Meiser Shein, which is the second tithe, after you gave to the Kohen his Truma and the Levi the Meiser Rishon, you take the second tithe, you take it and you eat in Yerushalayim, or Hektish Shenifter was redeemed. And now using it for your own personal purposes, which you're allowed to redeem it, that you could also make an Eruv with that too. And a Kohen who gets one of the 24 kind of gifts is Chala, which is what we separate, we burn it because we don't have the Kohen that's Tahar. So that also, he can make an Eruv with that. He cannot make with untithed produce, which is forbidden to have benefit, you're not allowed to eat tevel. But Levi Meiser Rishon Shleinu Trumasi, you also now take the first tithe that Truma wasn't taken off of him, because actually a Levi, his Meiser Rishon that he didn't take of what's called Trumas Meiser of it, it's considered like tevel for him, so you can't make an Eruv with that. And neither can you take the second type or the hektish, which is supposed to be used in the Eden Yerushalayim or given to the base of Mikdash. If it wasn't redeemed, says Rashi explains, although technically you could redeem it, but right now it's not redeemed, therefore you would not be able to make an Erev with these items. Now the Gemara goes through each one of these cases, almost every one of these cases. Demai. So we said you can make an Erev with Demai. Says the Gemara, wait a second. Holy Chazalei. What do you mean? It's not fit for him. You can't eat it without taking Shemitah Maisis out of doubt. The Rabbanan made you take off Maisis from Demai. Says the Gemara, since if he wanted to, he could go ahead and declare ownerless all his properties, all his assets, and then he'd be a poor person. The Chazalei would be fit for him, as we're going to shortly quote. So Hashnam Chazalei, now it's also considered fit for him, because technically he can be mafka ownerless in the Chasim, and then he can eat Demai without taking off Shemitah Maisis. It's not like the Mishnah says this Demai. It says Machil Nasanim Demai, we're allowed to feed poor people Demai, is between them days. And the Achsanya Demai, Achsanya Rashi explains, is the soldiers of the Jewish armies, which the government imposes that the people of the city have to feed them, and essentially the soldiers are really like paupers because they're not in their house, so therefore they have the same leniencies like a poor person, which they're allowed to go ahead and eat Demai, because really Demai is only a bit extreme. Really most Amaratzim really did take off Maisus. So regarding the Aniyim, who are under extreme circumstances, they said that they don't have to take off Trumas and Maisus.
They have to be mafkiret. It's chuzit to Ani right now.
Right.
So it's once we know it's chuzit.
Right.
So why do he doesn't have to be the one chuzit?
Right. If unless we're going like Sumchas, who holds that it has to be chazilei, it has to be fit for him. Right. That according to that opinion, that it has to be fit for him. That's who he has to be able to be migadi by mafka nechse. So that's why he's allowed to make the erev out of the man. So Amar Hunas, he just brings and places elsewhere explains why we're quoting this, that Beis Shammai disagrees. In case you ever see a halacha that's not like this, you should just know that it's Beis Shammai and it's not a contradiction. Tanulin Abarai says Beis Shammai, they disagree. It says Emachin as a name Demai. You're not allowed to give the poor people Demai. But Rabbi Shloimy, they say no Machin as a name Demai. You're allowed to give the poor people Demai. The next case in the Mishnah was regarding the Ma'aser Rishon, that its truma was taken off. You're allowed to make an erev with this. Says Gemara Pshita, obviously, of course, you did everything you had to do. Says Gemara Lo Tzricha, no, it's talking about the following case. Shegdimoi b'shibbolin. What you did was, the Levi took his Ma'aser Rishon in the stalks, in the ears of the grain, before Truma Gedolah was taken off. Now, then when the Trumas Ma'aser, so the Levi, he took from his Ma'aser Rishon Trumas Ma'aser, which is 1/10 from his type, but Truma Gedolah. But Truma Gedolah, which is the first thing that's supposed to be given to the Kohen, Truma Gedolah, was never given to the Kohen. Because biblically, what's supposed to be is you're supposed to take up Truma before Ma'aser. The Torah calls Reishis to Gancha, the Reishis is Truma. So the leftovers, after the Kohen gets, let's say, 1/50th, then the owner gives a 10th of it to the Levi. But now the Levi did some subterfuge. He went before the Kohen, so that he shouldn't miss out 1/50th from his Ma'aser. He went and beat the Kohen to the Truma. He took over his Ma'aser. He got Ma'aser Rishon from the owner first, and then he took over Truma's Ma'aser, gave that to the Kohen. And says the Gemara, that's going to be valid after the fact that Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg, because Amar Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg, he said Ma'aser Rishon shekdima b'shibbolin. If a Levi takes his Ma'aser Rishon, his 10th, when the ears of the grain, then these patim of Truma Gedolah, he's exempt from the Truma Gedolah that was really supposed to be taken from before. He doesn't have to take off that ratio of the Truma Gedolah from what he took. Shanam, like says a pasuk in Mamidbar. It says, you should elevate, and this is Tomah from a Levi, what he's supposed to give it to the Kohen, should elevate from it, the Ma'aser that you got, the Levi, you should elevate from it the Trumas Hashem, Ma'aser min Ma'aser. A 10th of the 10th, meaning your 10th, take a 10th of that and give that to the Kohen. Oh, says the Gemara, Ma'aser min Ma'aser matilach. What did I tell you? Only a 10th of the 10th. But I didn't tell you, besides the Trumas Ma'aser, to also take up Truma Gedolah. And therefore you see from the pasuk that he's exempt from taking off the Truma Gedolah. And that's the Chiddush of the Salacha, that even though you didn't take up Truma Gedolah, it's still going to be valid to make an erev, as we learn from this Gezeres HaKasam. But then the Gemara continues and says, wait a second, Abai says, if that's the case, you learn it from this pasuk. That if the Levi beat the Kohen, he only has to give up Trumas Ma'aser, not have to take up Truma Gedolah. So now, then even if he gets before the Kohen at a later stage, Bekrinami, even when they already threshed the grain. They already made into this huge pile what they do with all the grain. Even then, if the Levi goes there first, then even there you should say that, okay, I only told you Trumas Ma'aser, but not Truma Gedolah Ma'aser. Why then would you say that he has to? Amalei said, regarding the pasuk says later on, says Mikol Masri Seichem, from all your type, meaning the pasuk is talking about to the Levi, from all your type, from the 10th that you get, Terimu is kol trumas Hashem. You should elevate all the trumas of Hashem, which sounds like even truma gedayla. So you see from that pasuk that no, the Levi is going to have to take up not just trumas meiser, but even truma gedayla. So the Gemara says, wait a second, Ma'arisa, what did you see fit? There's two psukim. One pasuk is telling you only meiser the meiser, not truma gedayla. Another pasuk is saying no, kol trumas Hashem, even truma gedayla. Where did you see fit to say the pasuk that obligates you is when the Levi gets before the Kohen, when it's already in the pile? The pasuk that says you're exempt from giving truma gedayla is when it's the ears of grain. Where do you see to make that divide? It doesn't say that in the pasuk. So he says, no, I'll tell you why. When the Levi gets only at the later stage by the pile, it's called the kri, idgin. It already became dagon. It's already grain because you already see the kernels. And once it's called dagon, it's already tevel for truma. It's already considered untied for truma. Like the pasuk calls it in Devarim Yitches, Reishes dagon cha, the first of your dagon. So it's already dagon. You already have a chiyuv of truma. The fact that you rip out from before the kohen, that's not going to exempt you. You're going to have to give it to the kohen. But by the ears of the grain, when it's in the stalks, well, yidgin. It didn't become dagon yet. It's called now shiboilim. It's called the stalks. Oh, when the Levi takes it, it was not yet considered tavel the truma. It wasn't yet obligated in truma. The obligation only happens when it's in the kri, when it's in the pile. And therefore, that's the chiddush of this case of the Mishnah, that if the Levi only took trumas meisers and he didn't take truma gedayla, when he got there before in the shiboilim, in these stalks, that then it's going to be permitted to make an erev out of it because he doesn't have to take truma gedayla. And that's the chiddush of this case. That although truma is obvious, you could use it, but it wasn't taking truma gedayla, and still it's going to be out.
He's not the shibolim chayiv truma or not?
No, the obligation only starts later.
So then what it's gaining by taking it, it's like nothing.
The Levi gains how he got more from the 10th. When you take 10th from the owner, if the kohen already took, yeah, and for them he just beat him.
What if you give a kohen truma for the shibolim? You have to go later and give him again when you make it a decree.
Let's say not. But the point is,
so it's nothing.
No, if you gave it to the kohen, and he was saying that after the fact, you don't. You're supposed to give the kohen first.
Yeah.
So you didn't.
You're not mechuyev in the shibolim. You're not mechuyev for anything.
Right, but I'm saying, but
Levi for nothing.
But I'm saying you want to know if it's going to be valid when you're allowed to, whichever one it is. The point is that you're supposed to give the truma gedayla first. You didn't do that. The chiddush is if you went first by the shibolim, that then you're not going to have to retroactively go ahead and give the kohen his truma gedayla. He's supposed to get first. He's really supposed to. It was wrong. But after the fact, you don't have to take up truma gedayla. But if you went by decree, then even after the fact, you have to give it to the kohen.
If you give truma to from the shibolim to a kohen, you have to go later on and give him again?
Right, so saying, let's say you wouldn't have to.
So then it's like...
So what?
So what's the chiddush? The Levi took, right?
Right.
So of course he doesn't have to give anything to a kohen. Why should he have to give to a kohen?
Because it's supposed to come first. Like if without the pasuk telling you that you're pater, it's all gzeis hakasam. We have two psukim. Without the pasuk, you would have thought that he has to go ahead and give it to the kohen. If it's not valid, you beat him to the truma gedayla. The pasuk is telling you that no, ma'asim na'ma'isa, but truma gedayla, but trumas ma'asim na'ma'isa. That's the chiddush. The chiddush is that gzeis hakasam that you beat him to it. You're not supposed to. You have to give him the truma gedayla. So it's tevel still. Yes, even if it happened later on, whenever it is that the obligation starts, but it's tevel. Yeah. You're saying that it's not tevel right now. In the chanam, when it does become tevel, then you did the wrong thing. Maybe you would have to give him. The pasuk is telling you that you don't have to give it. So then the next case in the Mishnah was a ma'aser sheni v'hektish and nifter, regarding the second tithe or the hektish that became redeemed. So you might say here also pshit, it's obvious. What did you do wrong? You're allowed to redeem ma'aser sheni. That's the classic case we always talk about. You have ma'aser sheni funds, so you go ahead and the ma'aser sheni funds to take up to you to Yerushalayim, but the ma'aser sheni itself is redeemed already. You could use whatever you want to. Or the hektish, same thing. Says yeah, he gave, let's say, to hektish the principle. The halacha is when you redeem these two things, ma'aser sheni and hektish, you have to add on a fifth. And you didn't give the fifth. The fifth is not ma'akev. You're right, you have to give it, but right now it's not integral for it to be considered. It's redeemed already. You just also have to go ahead and give another fifth of, let's say, a penalty. So therefore, that's the chiddush, that even though you didn't give the fifth, it's still considered redeemed. You can use it with the 8. Now, then the other case of what you cannot use, said the Mishnah, you cannot use untied produce. So it's mapshita. Obviously, you can't use tevel. Tevel is asaba no asa. You can't use it. So it's rabbinically tevel. What does it mean? What's rabbinic tevel? You plant it in a pot that doesn't have a hole, so it's not nourishing from the ground. So that's something that's hydroponics or whatever this is. That's not something that really grows from the ground. Biblically, there's no halach of tevel. The chiddush is even though it's rabbinic tevel, it's still going to be forbidden to go ahead and have enough from it, and you're not allowed to make an erev out of it. The next case was You can either use the Meiser Rishon that you didn't take off the Truma. Now, as Rashi explains, the Gemara's assumption is, which Truma are we talking about that you didn't take off? Trumas Meiser, like the way the Rishon was. It was talking about regarding Shenitlu Trumas was that you took off Trumas Meiser. And here saying if you didn't take off Trumas Meiser, then the Levi cannot use that as an Erev. So it's going to Pshita, obviously. If the Levi doesn't take off Trumas Meiser from his Meiser, it's like Tevel. So obviously he can't use it. So it's going to no. Shehidima Bekri. When we're saying that he didn't take off the Truma, it means Truma Gedoyla. Where that's fit to take off before he takes off his Meiser from the Yisrael, because he went and he beat him by the Kri, by the pile. But not the Trumas Meiser, now the Levi, what do you always take from his Meiser? He took off Trumas Meiser. But not Truma Gedoyla, he didn't take off Truma Gedoyla. What would you say, like we said just previously in the Gemara? Rapava said, Tabaya, that it should be permitted even though Levi beats the coin by the Kri, by the pile. That's a Chiddush Kedeshani, like he answered him. He says, no, we have another pasuk, Alecha Makra, that says, Kol Chumas Hashem, when you went and you beat the coin by the pile already, when the grain was already threshed, that already, you have to give that to the coin. So when we said, Shalei Natul Min Truma, wasn't Trumas Meiser, it was Truma Gedoyla. You didn't take up Truma Gedoyla, even though you took up Truma Meiser, it's not going to be valid, it's still going to be considered as something that you can't use because you didn't take up Truma Gedoyla because you came at a later stage. The next case in the Mishnah was, neither can you go ahead and use the second type of the hektish that wasn't redeemed. So Pshita, obviously you can't use Meiser Sheni hektish that wasn't redeemed. It's forbidden. It's like a hektish thing. It says it was necessary shebadon. It was redeemed, but like padan kel chasam, but it wasn't redeemed according to the halacha. So you did a redemption, but the chiddush is telling you, but if it wasn't done exactly as we prescribed, it's not going to be valid. What does this mean? By Meiser Sheni shebadoy al gaba simon. It's where you redeemed it on a simon, which Rashi explains is a coin without a form, without a figure. The Torah tells you a pasuk in Devarim, which the simple translation of it is v'tzarta kesef. You should bind the money in your hand and take up the money that you redeemed the Meiser Sheni and bring it up to your shleim and buy stuff. But the Gemara darshans kesef shishlam tzur. The word v'tzarta besides binding could also mean the word of tzura, of a form. It has to be currency that has a form. We have a picture of George Washington. We have something on that coin. It has to have a form on it. But if it doesn't have, it's just a blank piece of metal. That's not going to be valid, and therefore that's what we're saying that it wasn't a good pigeon. Hektish. What's the case of hektish? You redeemed the hektish, but it was on ground. Rahmanam, the Torah says, meaning on real estate. The Torah tells you, you give the money, it becomes his, which Rashi actually says the pasuk is V'yikra and Chavzayin. When someone sanctifies his field, it says V'yosef chamishas kesef erkecha. He's going to add on a fifth of the money, of the value, which you see has to be kesef. It cannot be karka, and therefore that's what we mean to say. Of course, if you didn't redeem it all, there's no chiddush. You redeemed it. You just didn't do exactly as was prescribed. That's not going to be considered as a valid redemption, and therefore it's not going to be usable as an Erev. We'll continue the halacha in the next Mishnah. Continue regarding the parameters of an Erev Tchumen. So it says the Mishnah, Shalech Eruba b'yad charish. Let's say someone sends, meaning what happens is the Erev Tchumen, we'll see later on in this Masechta, but you have to, before Shabbos, put down the 2 meals worth at the end of 2,000 amas. If that becomes your Shabbos residence, and then you can go another 2,000 amas after that. So it says the Mishnah, let's say Hashalech Eruba b'yad charish. Let's say you send it with a deaf mute, or a shaita, a mentally deranged person, or a cut, or a minor. Or in someone that doesn't agree to the laws of Erev, that the Gemara is going to explain is a kuti. So then Ein Erev is not a valid Erev. But let's say he told someone else who lives over there. He called up Chaim Yankel. He says, look, I'm sending my son to go drop off the Erev Tchumen that I have to do the 2 minutes worth over there and to receive from him. Then says the Mishnah, Erev, that's going to be a valid Erev. Now the Gemara says, what, is that really so that a minor is not valid to go and make the Erev Tchumen for you? But when he says, you could send around your child to go to all the people in the development to get the Eruv Chatzeris, which everyone has to chip in for the meal, and make an Erev for the whole community. So why can't you see you could make an Erev? And that's the Gemara, Loikash is not difficult. Because Khan, our Mishnah talking about Eruv Tchumen, is talking about the Erev Tchumen. Khan, Rav Huna is talking about Eruv Chatzeris. What's the difference? So Rashi explains. Rashi holds that an Eruv of Chatzeris is just a domain. It could happen by itself. You don't need the action of the minor to create the chalois, the effect of the Erev, because actually we learned the Mishnah of Ayim and Alf. Let's say the Balabayas was already partners with his neighbors on something else. You don't have to make a special Eruv Chatzeris. We're already joined together. So therefore, the collection of a child is no less than already a pre-existing a joint partnership. In contrast, Eruv Tchumen is an acquisition of a domain. A child's not strong enough in his das or in his status to make an acquisition of this is now my Shabbos residence. And therefore a cotton is not going to be valid, although he could go and collect the Eruv Chatzeris. Now, then the Mishnah said, and we already clarified with Rashi, you cannot send with someone that does not agree to the halacha there. Says, who's that? Rav Chizda says, kutai, it's a kutin. If we're sent with a kuti, we can't rely on them. Now, then the Mishnah said, but if you told someone else to receive it from him before he gets over there, you already called him up and you told him to get it, and then the one who's going to get it from the child or whoever it is going to make the air for you, then the Mishnah said, it's going to be valid air. But then the Gemara has two questions. But maybe the child's never going to get there. Yeah, he's going to do it. You called him up and says, do me a favor. He says, look, your child never came over here. He went out to play. Who knows? Maybe the child's never going to get there. So the Gemara, it's like what Rav Chizda said. We're going to quote where Rav Chizda says his teaching, where he says, it's talking about where you're standing and you see that until he gets over there. You're right. It's talking about where you stand and you see him getting over there. Then the Gemara has a second question. But maybe the person who you made up with is never going to take it from the child. He's never going to make the Eruv, even though he promised you. But many people have such people in their lives. The guy is standing, and he never does it. So maybe he's not going to take it. So there's a presumption that an agent will do his agency. Here also there's a chazaka, an agent is going to do his agency. Now, just interesting, Taisa says, what's the Gemara's question and what's the Gemara's answer? You already know from inferring from the halacha of our Mishnah that chazaka does his shlichus, because you said you cannot send with a cher straight to a cotton. It's not going to be an air. But obviously the inference is if you send it with a pikeach, it's going to be an air. Obviously we already know the halacha of chazaka shlichus. The Taisa says no. There, you totally rely on it. He says, do me a favor, I need an air. You're giving him the food, so he'd make an erev tchumah for me. Now we know chazaka shlichus shlichus. Here, all he did was he says, I'm sending my child with the air. I just want you to go ahead and get it from him and put it down over there. So you're not relying on him on the entirety of the shlichus. Then he might not do it. And that was the Gemara's question that says, how do you know he's going to take it from him? And the Gemara says, no, even so, even if only part of it was that you wanted him just to accept it, even on that, you'll say, if he told you, if you asked him to do it, he's your agent, we presume that he'll do it, and therefore you can rely on that. And then the Gemara just clarifies, says, where were these two teachings of Rav Chizda and Rav Chizda originally set on, that we're then transposing it to our Mishnah over here? How it was set on the Tanya, on the following brisa. Similar type of a case, which actually Taisa even asked, why did they say on the brisa, not in the Mishnah? But let's say you gave to an elephant to bring your Eruv somewhere. Or to a monkey to bring it somewhere. As Rashi says, sometimes you could train an elephant and a monkey to go and do a certain mission. So you're sending them to drop it off at the end of 2,000 amas. Says the Bryce ain't there. That's not going to be valid. But let's you told someone who lives 2,000 amas away, do me a favor, I'm sending my monkey with the Eruv, do me a favor, take it and put it down, then how is it going to be valid? On that the question was, these two questions are posed on the Bryce. But maybe the monkey's never going to get there. So Rav Chizda says, you're right, but it's talking when you stand there and you watch, you see your monkey got there. But maybe the person's not going to take it from them. Rabbi Shloimy says, no, we have a presumption that shlich is going to do his shlichus, and therefore it's going to be a valid eruv if you have those two criteria. Something to discuss in today's daf, in Eruvin Daf Lamed Aleph, was explaining the halacha, elaborating on the halacha of Yehuda in the Mishnah. That the Brisa said you can make an eruv for kohen that's tahar, with truma that's tahar, in the grave. Now, we understand how he's getting over there, because he's getting there in some type of a wagon, some type of a box. But what's with the truma? The eruv itself, that's going to become tamei. How are you putting it on the grave? And then if it's tamei again, you're back to the problem. Then no one could eat truma that's tamei, so it's not going to be valid eruv. So he said either it's talking about that it was never came in contact with liquids, or even if it did, it was needed with fruit juices, which is not going to make it susceptible to tumah. So the truma is not going to become tamei. Fine. Question is, how are you getting it from the grave into your wagon? You have to be able to access it as your food to be your eruv. Oh, we're talking about you bring with pshutik klietz. That's not makabel tumah. So the vessel itself is not becoming tamei. Yeah, but what's the fact that even though it's not makabel tumah, but it's over you and the food, so it's oil. So then you're going to become tamei that way. No, it's not ma'al. Why? Because the words of the Gemara, which Rashi explains me to say that it doesn't have a tafach. So since it doesn't have a tafach, so therefore it's not going to be a valid oil to transmit tumah from the grave to the person, that's how you could go ahead and access it. Now then, if that's the case, why do Rabban say it's aser? Seems like a pretty viable option, especially if we're talking about by a kever, not by a basic vart. Cemetery, the whole you can't get into because all zard lav shmei oil. But you're standing right there on the side of the grave. Why can't you put the eruv of the truma on top of the grave? So, because they hold you cannot acquire a bias with Isur Hana. It's a grave, you're not benefit from it, and you're using it for your own personal benefit. Rabbi Yehuda holds, no, mitzvahs, labla on this, you're not on benefit. So what's the rabbanim? So either you could say that they hold that No, because the Eruv is even for Devar Shus, and therefore it is considered having benefit because you're doing it for just random purpose. You just want to go somewhere, and that's not considered a mitzvah. Or, no, even if they hold that you could only make an Eruv Devar mitzvah, and mitzvah of the Hamas then, the third option was you want to have that the food there is protected even after the Eruv was acquired. The mitzvah is only necessary for the Eruv to be at the time of Ben Hashmashas. When you're ready a few hours into Shabbos or right after the Zman, so then that's not a mitzvah, and you still want it to be protected because you want to be able to have that sub sandwich or whatever it is that you left over there. Because you want that snack, you can be able to eat it, and that's considered your own personal benefit. Therefore, that's why Rabbi Yehuda, he says, no, you don't care to be protected. They hold that you do, and therefore that would be considered Isser of Anah, and therefore you're not allowed to have the Eruv on the Kevin. The next Mishnah we explained was Ma'arvin. We spoke about different things that you can make Eruv with, and that you cannot. So the list of the things were, you can make Eruv with Demai. Why could you not only eat Demai? No, Migud. Since if he wants to come after his Nachas, will be like an Ani, and Ani can eat Demai without Trumas and Maisis. We said you could also use Maiser Rishon that the Truma was taken. Obviously, the Truma was taken. What's the Chiddush? No. What happened was that he went by the Shibalim, but he didn't take off Truma Gedayla. The Chiddush is that even though he didn't take off Truma Gedayla, but since he beat the Kohen by the Shibalim, which then, that's something that the Pasuk is telling you, that you only have to take off Maiser and Maiser, and you don't have to take off Truma Gedayla. Then, a case of Maiser Shen Hektish that was redeemed. What's the Chiddush in that? Yeah, but he didn't give the Chaimish. Even though he didn't give the Chaimish, but he redeemed it, it's going to be valid. And the Kahanim, we said they could use Chalat too, but we said what you cannot use is Tevel. Of course you can't use Tevel. No, it's rabbinic Tevel. It's an Atzis that does not have a hole, so biblically it's not considered as Tevel. Still, you can't use it. We said Ma'aser Rishon that you didn't take up Truma. Of course you didn't take up Truma. It's considered Tevel for the lady. No, you took off Truma. You took off Trumas Ma'aser. You didn't take off Truma Gedayla. That's the one you didn't take off. And because you got before the Kohen by decree by the pile of the grain. That's already called Dagon. That's already had the obligation. And that's the pasuk that would explain it. We said Mara Isa, the pasuk that says Kol Trumas Hashem. That's going to be going on such a case that you can't use it because you didn't take up Truma Gedayla. Then we said regarding Ma'aser Shein Hektish that was not redeemed. Of course, it wasn't redeemed. You can't use it. No, you redeemed, but you just didn't do it Kol Chasam. What does that mean? By Ma'aser Shein, you took an asimon that doesn't have any tzura. The pasuk says V'tzarta Akesha, which we said tzarta also means tzura has to have a form. And regarding Hektish was you used real estate when it says V'nasna Kesef, and that's not going to be valid. So therefore, that's the case that we're talking about. It was redeemed, just wasn't halachically, and therefore it's not going to be valid. Then the next Mishnah was if you send your Eruv where the Cheresh of a cotton or the Kuti, it's not going to be an Eruv. But if you told someone else to receive it, it's going to be an Eruv. Now regarding a minor, we just pointed out that this halacha is only regarding Tchumen. Whereas by Rubach Chatzeres, then we said that actually Rav Huna says he could do it because you're not doing any action. You just happen to be gathering it together, making a shutras, and even if they were prior a shutras, it would work. But by Tchumen, his action making a shvisa, making a kinyan, that's where it's not going to work. And we said, how does it work when if you tell someone else, how's that valid? First of all, there's two criteria. You have to see that the child actually got over there. And the second one is even if you don't see that guy putting it down, making the Erev Tchumen, but we have a chazaka that the shliach, who is this other guy that's receiving it, he's Isa Shlichusa, and so too we said regarding an elephant or a monkey is the same thing, that you have to see that he got there, and that you could then presume that the person who received it is going to do it, because Chazaka Shlicha is Shlichusa. Thank you to anytime for hosting us.